Hi, and welcome to the Loan Officer Team Training Podcast. My name is Irene Duford. I'm your host, and I'm super excited today to have an expert in Instagram with us today. My friend Michelle Berman Michael is here. I'm so happy you're here. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I met Michelle through a friend, Jen Conley. She introduced us. I
Yep.
think Jen went to your mastermind group, one of your events. And then she told me how awesome you were. So she said, you've got to meet her. She's in Phoenix. She's in Arizona, right near you at the time you were. And so you and I got together for breakfast when you were out to here with Knox.
Yeah. So pregnant.
Yes. So it was a fun way to get to know you. I got to see you both ways now, and now you've moved. And so tell us a little bit about what you do, Michelle, with Instagram. And,
Yeah.
just to introduce us to you.
Yeah, sure. No problem at all. The fast rundown on who Michelle Berman Michael is I'm a mom, I'm a wife. I have a little boy, 2.5 now. It's wild to think that the last time I saw you in real life, Irene, right? He was really, really big in my belly. But for all my mamas in the house, I had a 10-pound baby and I'm only 5'3". So just imagine how big I was. But
Wow.
it was amazing. What an experience to get to carry him for 9.5 months, and it was really special. But fast forward to today, I am back working out a lot. So I'm a competitive CrossFitter. I'm running pretty regularly. I just did my first half marathon. I have my second one here towards the end of May. So it's been really fun to get back to the pre-mom bod, if you will. And it's been kind of a fun journey to see Knox get to experience that alongside us. So he's out in the garage with us all the time working out, and it's really fun. Ask him to do a burpee and he can probably do it better than I can. But it's been really fun to grow my company while being a mom. Also, I think that it's been a really interesting and socially acceptable experience, I think, is something that I feel like urged to say. And you and I were talking about this offline, but there's the occasion when the days go awry and, Knox has to end up on Zoom with me. And so it's been cool to let that side of my life come out in what I do. So as far as the day-to-day, what is Berman Media and who are we? We specialize in teaching loan officers and real estate agents how to actively outbound prospect through the Instagram platform. And what that really comes down to or boils down to is teaching you how to prospect through the digital space, whether that's Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, it doesn't matter, right? The strategy can be applied, but we specifically specialize in doing this through Instagram. But the key focus, and I really am excited to talk about this with you, is we don't need more, right? And I think a lot of people assume I need more followers, I need more engagement, I need more leads, I need more. And what my company teaches you how to do is to leverage the data that you already have to grow and scale your community that you're already in front of. And I think being able to leverage and use the passions that you have, the things that you enjoy doing outside of doing loans, is the unlock to scaling your community in a hyper-local fashion. And things like your database, right? I just had a call earlier today with a gentleman who said, I have 750 agents in my database and I am terrible at staying in front of them. I don't do anything other than email marketing. And that's where what my team and I do for our clients really comes into play, teaching the loan officer how to take those 750 names, make sure they're connected to them properly, not just who, but what to say, and then ultimately how to track it. So
that's awesome. And I love what you do. I follow you on Instagram. I think it's fun watching the different things that you're doing. And I purchased your Instagram course, the online course, when we first met. It's been amazing. What I did is I gave that course to my assistant at the time. She was a part-time media assistant, gave it to her, and she was here local going to college. And she got my Instagram up and running for us. I mean, I should say there's a lot of work left to do on it, obviously, and to get better at it. But at least she gave us a presence. And now we have our podcast reels and everything on there. I'm not in it enough as much as I should be, but at least it got started. It's started. And she did it with your course, which was amazing. And I didn't even do anything. She just got it all up and running for me. And so at least she got it started. And now I'll post once in a while and things, but I know I need to get better at it. But it was through your course that we got it all started. So I'm grateful to you for that. The question I have for you, Michelle, is yes, you do Instagram for people and your team will take care of it for them as you get to know them and that. What other services do you offer? You have the course that people can do it self-paced. What
Mhm.
else do you have?
Yeah, so the course, I want to just break it down because there's really three options. The course is called Beyond the Method now. So when you initially purchased it back in 2000, I think 20, it was
Yes.
a little bit different than it is currently. And in a good way, it has evolved. So we are officially trademarked as Beyond the Method. I'm waiting for the official piece of paper in the mail, but that is a 2-year journey of getting Beyond the Method trademarked officially. That will be framed like right there somewhere back behind me here soon. But we are officially called Beyond the Method, and the course itself is over 100 videos. So initially, when I first launched, it was 67. Now it's over 100. It is very, very detailed. I very laughingly and kind of lovingly call it my thesis because I decided to quit grad school right before I officially got my thesis and started the 40-hour piece. And I laughingly say now, like, instead of paying $40,000 to go do this 40-hour course to get, to do my official thesis, I now get paid to do it. So it's a much better turnaround. But the course itself has really evolved. So it's well over 100 videos now, 14 modules broken down into 3 phases. So the course is self-paced. You go at it at your own leisure. The benefit, though, of what we now do with it is we typically sell it as a bundle. So the course plus private coaching. The private coaching is done with me or with my COO, Tiffany. So the reason for that is what we found is a lot of people buy the course and then they don't do anything with it. And so being able to assist in the accountability there is where that private coaching pillar of it has really come into play. And it's made a huge difference in your guys' ability to actually take action once you spend the money to buy it. So that's option one. Option two is just private coaching for me or with me, meaning you wouldn't have access to the content or the collateral of the program, but you would have 10 1-hour private sessions alongside me. So we have tons and tons of coaching clients that end up starting in private coaching and then add the bundle later on, or add the course, I should say, to the bundle later on. And then the VIP program is the second piece that you were mentioning, which is where my team will actually take everything over. We do all of your copy. We write and develop all of your pillars, if you will, is what we call them. But we develop all of your 4 core content pillars. We do all your branding in-house. We write all your copy. We also do all of your outbound prospecting in the brand awareness category on your behalf. So we don't do the question asking on your behalf as far as if you're trying to ask a realtor a question. We don't do that. Reason being is nobody will know your relationship with those individuals you're trying to touch base with better than you will. We help on the brand awareness side as far as getting your name out there, making sure you're cross-pollinating and connecting to all the people on all the different platforms. And the third piece to what you would be able to do with me is I actually now travel the country speaking, teaching, doing webinars. Webinars is my big focus for the year of 2024. I love traveling and I love going wherever the world decides to take me, but we were in Minneapolis a little bit ago. We've been in Vegas recently. We've been in Scottsdale. We're all over, right? But what's beautiful about that is I get to spend time in rooms with a lot of you guys shoulder to shoulder. So those are fun for me, but the webinars is really the primary bread and butter. And then a big thing for me is also podcasts. So if you're listening and you have a podcast and you need a guest, that would be an option for sure.
Awesome. Okay, great. So what made you go into Instagram? What you mentioned that you were going to go to get your thesis done and then you
Yeah.
decided not to. So what happened that made you change direction?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I don't think I've ever been asked that question. But the premise of it was I went to college. I went to Rutgers for all of my East Coast people up in here. And when I graduated, I had a degree in journalism and psychology. And there was an intent behind that. I thought to myself, I really want to write a book. I really have always really loved the concept of being able to use my voice to tell a story, but I wasn't really sure what the voice was. I wasn't really sure what I had to say quite yet. And I remember applying for law school, which is what my dad was. My dad was a bankruptcy lawyer for 40 plus years, just actually retired at the end of 2023, which is very exciting for him.
It is.
But as a bankruptcy lawyer, I spent a lot of time growing up in the legal space. My mom was a paralegal, and that's how my parents met. Was my mom was actually the paralegal on the opposing side of a case that my dad was on. And she basically bet him that if she won the case, he had to take her out. And fast forward 41 years, they've been married and have my sister and I. So it obviously worked out in my mom's favor. But the point of it, or the point of me telling you that story, is that the law field or the legal field has been in our family for a very long time. And my dad was really excited about the concept of me going to law school. Think very legally blonde, right? If you're just listening to the audio of this, I am very blonde. I like to think I'm pretty smart, but I applied to UNLV Law School. I was accepted, and it was something about like getting that and being like, ugh, it just doesn't feel like me. And I know I could have gone, and I know I would have done really well, but was my heart in that? And I asked myself that question, and it just really wasn't. And I just had, I don't know that there was a specific moment where I was like, oh, this is it. But I was really intrigued by social media. It was really up and coming. I graduated college in 2012 for reference point.
Mhm.
And so we were very close to this explosion of the Instagram space, which really happened in 2014. But Facebook at the time, Twitter at the time, both of those platforms were just ginormous. As a journalism student in college, like we were required to have Twitter accounts. We had to follow all of the big news articles or news
Mhm.
publications and all of that, which still had very large print publications at the time. But
Yes.
things were slowly starting to transition into the digital space. And so I was Googling different MBA programs, thinking maybe if I get my MBA, it would suit me better to be able to eventually own my own company. Again, wasn't really sure what that would look like, but I ended up coming across Drexel's social media public relations degree, and it was a very, very new degree. And reading the description of all of the different core classes, I was like, holy crap, this is amazing. It's basically public relations for social media, right? So how to manage when you post something and maybe you don't get the feedback you want, or maybe it creates a firestorm of not so goodness, right? Or and vice versa, of being able to
Uh-huh.
manage a brand and manage a reputation, if you will, through the social space. And it was a really, really cool description of the degree. It was very standard, 2-year master's program, all done digitally. I only had to go in person once a year for a test at the end of each year. And at the time I was living in Philly, so Drexel wasn't very far. And so it was pretty easy on paper. So I enrolled, or I got accepted to be in the program. I started with the program, and then right before my thesis happened, mind you, that's, however many credits that is leading up to that, was already done, checked off the box, all the boxes done. And I just said to myself, I was like, man, I've been doing this for all these other people. There has to be a way for me to teach people how to do this for themselves instead. And so I just took a big giant leap of faith, much to the demise of my parents. Like, no, Michelle, go back and finish what? And my sister saying, my sister has 2 master's degrees, and she's like, Michelle, just finish this stupid degree and get the piece of paper and just be done. And I was like, I just don't want to. I just don't care. And then very shortly after that, Berman Media was born. So I actually incorporated Berman Media in November of 2014. So just right before I would have officially finished my 40-hour thesis, about 2
Wow.
months prior. So it was the birth of what I now say is kind of my baby, right? Which is this company that allows me to have the voice that I really felt like I've always had, but I now have a place, and I know I now have a lane as far as how to share it.
Yes. Oh, that's so great. One of the reason why I like people to tell their stories on this podcast specifically is because it helps people to hear how someone went from where they were to where they are now, and some of the things that happen on the way, because there's nobody that's successful that doesn't have a story about how they got there. And I love that you shared that you were that close to getting it and you
Mhm.
didn't do it. And you didn't, and it turned out pretty darn good, didn't it?
I would say fast forward, 10 years, I'm in a pretty happy place for sure. If you would have asked me, Michelle, was it a good decision back then? I don't know if I would have said yes or not, but today I definitely believe that God had a plan, and that was the plan for me. And I'm really, really grateful that I listened to my gut, and I just followed my intuition.
Yeah. And you've helped a lot of people along the way. That Instagram course, just that one course that we bought, that I purchased for our company, is amazing. It's amazing. I just recently went in there again and looked at it and thought, my goodness, I had my assistant looking at all this and I hadn't looked at it enough. And now I'm
Mm.
going to start studying it as well. So you've helped so many people because of that one decision that you made that was a key decision. And look at how many people you've helped because of that. It's amazing.
I
So
really think it's like the butterfly effect concept, right? Of like, if you change a decision, what would the outcome be? Now, had I said yes to going to law school, I still believe that, my career, I would have had a blossoming career just
yes.
solely because of who I am as a human being. But, all of the journey that led to meeting my husband and having my son and all of that, like, would it be the same? It's hard to say. And I'm grateful that I don't have to find out. But I had, and Irene, you'll love this. Just the other day, I had a loan officer call. She had scheduled a call on my calendar, and I recognized the name of where she came from a training I had actually just recently done. And she had accidentally scheduled a 30-minute call in addition to her 1 hour private coaching session with me. So
Uh-huh.
I called her just to say, "Hey, Lori, did you mean to do that?" And she goes, "Michelle, I'm actually glad you called because I didn't mean to do that. I'm excited about our private coaching session next week. But I have to tell you that right before I saw your webinar, I had told my boss I was quitting. I was leaving the mortgage industry. I was done. It's been really, really hard. It's been very frustrating. And I told him, I said, I'm hanging up my hat." And then I went on vacation and I came back and I had gotten an email from my company that you were doing this webinar. So I said, whatever, cool, I'll watch it. And she ended up watching the webinar, meeting me through that. Obviously, I hadn't met her yet. And she said that the reason she has not left the mortgage industry was because of that webinar and the help that I gave her in that hour session. She said, all of this effort that I've been putting into the Instagram space and all the things I feel like I'm so close to figuring out, you just gave me the unlock of what I didn't know how to do. And now I feel like I can do it. And I mean, I've only been in the business 10 years, which doesn't sound like a lot when you're talking to people like you or someone like this lady who's been in the mortgage industry for 25 years. But man, that feels good to just know that somebody heard it in a way that changed the way they looked at it, the perception of how they look at social or Instagram for that matter, and how it can create this massive opportunity for you in your business. And it's not just me and you, Irene, right? Like as coaches, it's
Mhm.
people who are trying to do loans. Are you trying to still originate? Are you going direct to agent? Are you going direct to the CPAs and the financial planners and all of those people? If
Yes.
you're struggling, the answer is right in front of you. The writing is on the wall. It's just a matter of having someone expose the solution.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was originating, when I met Carl, that's how I met him, was through video. And he taught me how to do video from before anyone was doing video. And we had an origination business in a small community in Kingman, Arizona.
Mhm.
And I was doing video and no one was doing it. And it was amazing the results that we were getting just from doing something different than what everyone else was doing. And I would go to I went to a bakery and a couple of different places and I interviewed them so that we could show everyone on social media this new company that had come in town or this bakery or different things that were happening with different business owners. We went to a yogurt place. We interviewed the people, a chiropractor, a couple of chiropractors in different places like that. And I just think it's really important to showcase other businesses. If you're in a local community, it's a really important thing. And it doesn't have to be local. You can showcase anybody. And we get to do that with podcasts now, which is what I love. I love to have you on my podcast so that I can talk about what you do that is working.
Yeah.
And it's helping loan officers. And that's what this podcast is all about. It's about helping loan officers. I just think it's great what you're doing. And I'm super excited for you. I love that I got to meet you a few years ago before you had Knox, and now I see where you are. And I'm so happy for you, just super happy for you that you followed your gut. So that's what
Yeah.
people need to do if they want success. Go by how you feel. If you feel led to go in a certain direction, go in that direction, just like that one loan officer stayed on because of what you said in that webinar. And I think that's awesome.
You actually watched that webinar. If you recall, Irene, it was the
Yes.
one. So I think the biggest thing I want loan officers to hear right now, and the word of my organization for loan officers this year specifically. And again, you and I very briefly talked about this offline, but the concept of more, right? Like every loan officer wants more deals, more leads, more, right? Which who doesn't want those things? Like that's our nature when we're in
Yes.
sales, to want to sell more, right? Because typically you sell more, you make more money. But the biggest issue, and really where I feel like what I do is going to help you understand that you don't need more. what you need to do is you need to be better at digging into what you already have access to. So again, those, the example I used in the very beginning when I was introducing myself of a loan officer that has 750 agents in his database. And I asked him a few very poignant questions, all of which I knew the answer to, but I still had to ask the questions. And it became very obvious to him, oh my gosh, you're right. And one of the specific questions was, well, what do your emails look like? Like, what type of emails are you sending them? And he was like, well, what do you mean I'm sending like the normal touch point ones, like the ones that my marketing team sends out? And I was like, bingo, there's your problem, right? Because the types of emails that you're sending out, how are they any different than everybody else's?
Mm-hmm.
And how are you incorporating other things into how you're sending emails? For example, right? If you're going to spend money and spend time producing better social content, your emails better match, right? And
Mm-hmm.
elevating your email marketing game is so important. And if I get an email from you and I go and I look at your Instagram and they're completely different, the tone of voice is different, the aesthetic is different, the type of content you're sharing is different, there's a disconnect. And unfortunately, or fortunately, however you choose to look at that, we live in a day where the younger generation can sniff it out and we can feel the disconnect from the two platforms, right? We're looking at social media as a place to go connect more than we are to consume. So that ties into what type of content are we sharing? Because if we're posting content that we think is valuable, but who is it valuable for, right? And you have to remember who, when someone's consuming it, what are they looking for? Like, what am I, a 33-year-old new homeowner now? My husband and I just built our first home together. But like at the time when I was getting ready to start this process, what was I looking on Instagram for? Like, where was I spending time actually scrolling? And that's where your job as a loan officer is, to catch me, right? So how can the loan officer, produce content to catch me in that part of my process? And then how does the email piece tie into that? So if any of you guys have ever read the book Good to Great by Jim Collins, the concept of the flywheel, that's what we're talking about here, right? All of the different pieces to your marketing game have to be working in symmetry, if you will, or being consistent or congruent, whatever word you want to use, across the board. And this was a big disconnect that I've noticed for a lot of loan officers, is they're doing one thing really well, or they're doing everything half-assed, quite frankly. And so being able to say, okay, my Instagram is not where I want it to be. Let's spend time focused on this, and then allow that to bleed out into all of the other platforms, including email, including YouTube, including all of these different places, because you don't need more followers. What you do need is you need to do better, and you need to be better at connecting to the ones that are already choosing to be there. Now, if you take this granularly and say, oh, I only have 300 followers, so like how much good could that do me? Well, the reality is do you know all 300 of those? I'm going to guess not. 300 people is a lot of people if you think about that, right? So do you know all 300 that are already consuming you? And take it another step backwards and say, are all of those people who have willingly taken the time to start following me, they at some point made the decision to hit the follow button, right? Why? And how are you, the person that they are now following, giving back to them, right? In the form of, are you engaging back with them? Because if you're not, they will leave. And look at your stats. That's not me saying that. That's your stats, right? And even my own, I looked at it this morning. I think in the last week, I've had like 190 new followers, but I had 70 people who have stopped following me in that same time frame, right? So no matter what, no matter how good you are at producing content and staying in front of your people will leave. That is very natural. That's the trend, right? It's not intentional. It's not like I did anything, quote, wrong, but that just is what happens. So that is why being in front of the people that are already consuming your content is so important and is so valuable when done properly, because the stick factor will be there. They will be less likely to leave. And if they do start consuming your content consistently enough, and then they also get a message from you, now we're really talking as far as how we keep them around. So again, to the point of more, you don't need more. What you do need is you need to be better at connecting to the people that have already given you their market share, right? Their eyeballs. They've given you the access to their eyeballs. Now, what are you doing with it?
As a mortgage advisor, you know that having a high-performing loan team is critical to building a successful business. But training them can be time-consuming, and it can detract from more important tasks like generating leads and growing your business. But that's where we come in. We created Loan Assistant Mortgage Training Bootcamp, a self-paced online course available immediately to train your team, including newer loan officers, on how to actually do mortgage loans. Our course takes them step by step through the process, from taking a complete loan application to creating effective communication with clients, referral partners, and team members. When they complete the class, they will have the training to be an asset to you and your mortgage business. Visit loanteamtraining.com and navigate to the Loan Assistant Mortgage Training Bootcamp tab to review our course details and enroll. With our training, you can confidently delegate and devote your time to growing your business even more. Yes. So what do you suggest? Do you have like a Monday you do this, Tuesday you do that? Tell me about how that works.
It's a great question. And the answer to that is yes, there is definitely a structure or a schedule. As far as how this works, it's built out in a 5-day tracker. It's called the Be on the Method Engagement Tracker, but the tracker itself sets you up for each of the 5 days of the week, where you wake up, you have a very specific category of what you're focused on, meaning who you're trying to target. It's a little bit different for people like me and you, Irene, where we're not originating, right? But our goal on the Instagram platform is slightly different. Now, if you're listening to this and you're a branch manager and you're not originating, but you're trying to recruit, right? I have a big webinar coming up where I had to speak to 70 of these people and teach them how to recruit using Instagram. And the cool thing about that is no matter where you fit, I'm originating, I'm coaching, I'm just a leader within the organization, and I don't actually need Instagram to generate business, but I need Instagram to lead by example, because I'm getting paid to be a leader in my company. Right? If that's you, or if you're the person trying to recruit or whatever, the answer is you have to have the presence, but the structure is different based off of what your ultimate end goal is, or who or what your plan is as far as what you want out of Instagram, right? Do you need any of those things? So the fast answer to your question is yes. Now, how do you break that down? Typically, Mondays is what I call your leverage day. So that essentially just means that you're going to be creating leverage and utilizing other relationships to build the bridge to another relationship. Now, the best example I can give you, we'll use both me and you, Irene, and then we'll use a loan officer that's originating as a second example. Okay. So if you're you and I, right, where our goal is to get exposure for our coaching programs, then one of the ways we have to do that is podcasting, right? Getting on other people's podcasts, because that creates exposure. Now, on Mondays, that's my goal, right? So Mondays in my tracker is podcasting. So every Monday I wake up and I go to someone's Instagram, or I scroll in a specific focus on Instagram to try to find someone who I know that has recently been on a podcast that I have not been on. And I then create leverage, or utilize leverage, to create the bridge between the podcast and me being on it, right? So for example, we have a mutual friend, Kyle Draper. He's an excellent friend of mine, someone I still talk to almost to the day, or just about every day. We met on Clubhouse back during COVID. If you guys remember Clubhouse, it's crazy that
yes.
came out of my mouth, but that Kyle and I met on Clubhouse, and he same concept as me, has a coaching program, very different structure though, and very different goal, but we use each other, like not in a negative way, but to create leverage. So for example, we have both been on each other's podcasts. We have both had similar guests on our shows. And then we say, hey, so-and-so, I saw that you just recently interviewed Kyle. Kyle and I are very good friends. I would love the opportunity to talk to you. And that creates leverage for me, right? Because not only am I building credibility by being connected to someone like that in the industry, but I'm also backing it up, right? Because if that person goes to my account and looks at the content I'm producing and looks at the people who I've had on my podcast, all of a sudden the like, know, and trust factor, right? That triangle of sales is closed. So that's Mondays. If you're an originator, you can do this a little bit differently, in the sense of you go to one of your top agents that you're currently getting a lot of business from. And then you actually click the little person with the plus sign button that's in their profile, the suggested accounts button. And what
Okay.
will happen is Instagram will give you a big giant drop down of a bunch of other agents very similar to that person. And it's basically going to be a pool of, well, if you work with this agent, you might know based off your connection to them, all these other people. So now you get to go talk to all those other agents. And once it gets to a place where you can drop the fact, hey, I know this person, how do you and I not know each other? It becomes a very easy introduction. And so Mondays is leverage. That's a long-winded answer to that. But Tuesdays is what I like to say your dream 100 list. So if you have the top 100 agents, or if you're recruiting, it's the top 100 loan officers that you're trying to recruit, and you're basically putting a big filter on it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what do I mean by that? Most loan officers, when they're recruiting or trying to generate realtor partners, they have a core kind of demographic of what they're looking for, right? An agent that's doing X amount of deals in X amount of or X area that specializes in this type of buyer or whatever it might be,
Uh-huh.
right? Sort of have a mental filter on who you are trying to work with or who you are excited about working with and want more of. So when you build that dream list out, that's who goes on that day. Now, most likely, if you're listening to this and you're working with Irene or you're working with some coaching program to some extent, you have a database of who these people are, right? You kind of have a hot list of people that you're trying to get in front of or that you've met with before. Maybe they haven't sent you a deal yet, right? That's kind of that dream list. Wednesdays is typically listing agent day, which means all of the agents that were on the listing side of the transactions that you've done. Now, why is this awesome? Because guess what? In order for that listing agent to have gotten their listing closed, they needed you, right? So hopefully you have a good relationship with the buyer agent, and the buyer agent has a positive relationship with that then listing agent, to the point where if you, the loan officer, are name dropping the buyer agent that you're working with specifically or worked with on that transaction when creating a relationship with the listing agent, it will go well if done properly. And then the other day is CRM day, which is basically taking every single name out of your database and putting it on a tracker and finding them on Instagram, finding them on Facebook, and having specific categories, or I'm sorry, specific links for each of the two for each name, right? So if you have 750 people in your database, you're going to have 750 names with an Instagram account and a business Facebook or a personal Facebook link right next to it. And then every Wednesday, when it's time to do your CRM day or engage with your CRM on Instagram, you're going to that specific list and making sure that you're working through a handful of those people on Instagram specifically. So you're clicking on the profile, going to it, engaging with it. The other day is Thursday, which would be LinkedIn day, which most loan officers have a pretty significant following on LinkedIn, or it's a platform that they spend a lot of time on. But the question therein lies, are you connected to all of the people on LinkedIn on Instagram as well? And the vast majority will say no. And they'll also say that Instagram is a platform that they haven't put enough time into. So they've put a lot of their time into LinkedIn to connect with other agents or to connect with other loan officers. And my question to them is always, well, how do the messages sound when you get them on LinkedIn? And they're like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, I don't know about you, but when I'm on LinkedIn, the sales breath is so bad, right? Like the types of messages that we get are so salesy that they come across and it's just like, ugh, no, right? And so I personally have actually messed with some of the people who have messaged me and kind of been like, do people actually respond to that? And just kind of go into like coaching mode to kind of fix the problem. But I long-windedly say that Thursdays is LinkedIn day, with your intention being to cross-pollinate, right? To make sure that all the people that you are consuming on LinkedIn or you're connected to, you are also connected to on Instagram. And that's a process, right? Especially if you have
Takes
thousands of
time.
names that we're talking about. But is it worth the time when you're
Definitely.
thinking about, hey, I don't need more, I need to do better with the ones that I already have?
Yes.
And then Fridays is Fridays is re-engage day. So re-engage means that all of the conversations you've had in the week leading up to that day, essentially you are saying or you're spending that day on reigniting or restarting conversations with any of those people. So for example, you and I have a great conversation in our DMs on Monday. We keep talking all the way through Tuesday a little bit, but then like most conversations, it's going to naturally or organically fizzle out. That's very common. right? Think about you and your girlfriends, Irene, are like, we're on a group text with all of our people and we're like, oh my gosh, dinner, or oh, I have to go get my kid. And next thing you know, you're like, crap, I forgot to respond. And it's been 2 days. That is so normal in our day-to-day life. And it is equally as normal in our social platforms or in our DMs on the Instagram platform. So allowing that to happen is fine. Like that's completely okay. But that's where Friday comes into play because we now get to reignite that conversation, especially if it's someone who fits the ideal client category for us. It's somebody that we know we want to be talking to, and we've gotten good responses from them. Because if you and I talked back and forth for 36 hours, we probably had a pretty good conversation. So I want to make sure if you're the ideal person for me, that on Friday, I go back to your account. Do you have a new piece of content? Do you have a new story up? Do you have something that I can re-engage with to spark the conversation back to life? And Fridays, that re-engage day becomes, the day where when you're trying to market a webinar, when you're trying to market a course, when you're trying to market whatever, that re-engage list basically becomes your hot lead list. And that becomes the list of people specifically that you focus on marketing to for whatever the event is you're trying to put together first.
Well, that's awesome. I love that you have a structure. Everybody needs a structure. You need to have a process, a system of doing it. So tell us something that you're working on that you're super excited about. Do you have anything coming up, a webinar, anything like that?
We have a bunch of stuff happening actually. I have a big webinar with a big mortgage company on next Tuesday. I don't know if that will be relevant when this officially, but most importantly, I have a big mastermind event in May. And then my personal in-house private event is actually this October, which is my favorite event of the year. So you and I were talking about this at the very beginning of how we first met, which is through Jen Conley, a great, great friend. And she came to this in-person event that I host. And it's basically a 2-day mastermind. It is very intense. It is not for the faint of heart in the sense of you're going to leave really tired. This is not where we're going to go and like hang out and just like, go party by the pool. Like, no, we're going to be taking notes upon notes upon notes. So it is 2 days of your brain power being turned all the way up. And the goal with that being for you guys to leave at the end of the 48 hours really, really ready to rock and roll with what I teach. That's my primary focus as far as marketing outbound to you guys. We haven't decided if we're doing a mini course challenge, which I think you've actually been part of as well, Irene. And it's basically a 30-day intensive. It's really hardcore, but it's only 30 days. And I say hardcore like in a good way for all my oh, that sounds scary. When I say hardcore, I mean accountability like nobody's business, because I know not just, having been an athlete my entire life, but really just being a coach in the space, that the best way for us to get results is to be really accountable to doing what we say we're going to do.
Yes.
Having some skin in the game, right? So it's not free, but it's not supposed to be, because if you don't pay for it, why would you do it? It's not going to sting as bad if you're not doing it. So our mini course challenge is something that I'm really proud of. And it's that 30-day sort of sprint to make a big difference quickly. And then the people that do the best typically are the ones that keep going after that. So that if we decide to do that, that will most likely be in June.
That's great. You've got a lot of good stuff coming on. I know you're helping a lot of people. Just recently, that National Association of Mortgage Brokers and NAM, you did a webinar that was amazing. And so just keep doing what you're doing. I'm super happy that you came on today and that you shared all of this really good information, because it doesn't just apply. I used to think that you just did Instagram, and it's not true. You help with emails, you help with getting everything on the same page, having the same voice everywhere you go. So you have lots of things. So where can people get a hold of you? How do they contact you to find out what you have? What's your website? And we'll put it in the show notes as well.
Yeah, the easiest way to get me is actually through Instagram. And then I say that because I want, if you hear me right now with Irene, I want you to say, Michelle, I heard your podcast with Irene, because my favorite thing to do is to screenshot that to you and be able to say, Irene, look, this person messaged me, because it makes the podcast host feel good, right? So especially to know that they're reaching and creating an impact in what they're trying to do. So if you DM me on Instagram, Berman Media Social, all one word, or you just type in Michelle Berman Michael, that will pop up too. But I answer all my own messages. So if you send me one, it will be me that is responding to you. And that's an important one for people to know, that they'll get me directly. As far as our website, it's just Berman Media PD, which is P as in Paul, D as in dog.com. No, it doesn't stand for police department, in case you're wondering. But I think you asked me that like
I
4 years
did a long
ago.
time ago. I thought, wait, that sounds like police department.
Yeah. No, but Berman Media PD, P as in Paul, D as in dog.com, or Berman Media Social on Instagram.
Okay. And I can attest to the fact that Michelle does DM like she says she does. She lives what she teaches, because you and I have communicated quite a bit on DM instead of just texting or emailing. Emailing is the worst way someone can get a hold of me.
Yeah.
Texting is good, and private messaging is really good. So
Yeah, emails, I mean, I think we're all in the same boat, right? Like we get so many emails on a consistent daily basis that
Mhm.
it's like sort of the last place that I'll go to respond in the day. Now, if you get an email from me at 5 a.m., that's real common because I do what I call my golden hours in the morning. So when I wake up, I get up about 4:20 and I work for about 2 hours before my son wakes up. And that's where I get all my emailing done, right? So all
Mhm.
of those responses, all of the logistics that I'm working on if I'm trying to get somebody scheduled or whatever, or if somebody emails me with questions from the course, private coaching clients that will email me questions for their homework, whatever.
Uh-huh.
They all know to expect an email from me at 5 in the morning because that's when I'm in front of my computer doing that type of stuff. So yeah, Instagram is definitely the best place to get me throughout the whole day because that's where I'm spending, my focus or putting my
Mhm.
energy. But emailing works too. It's just slower.
Well, good. It's been so great to have you on, Michelle. Thank you for taking your time and for giving so much information. It's been really good, deep, good information for people to have. And so
Yeah.
if you want to get a hold of Michelle, she's given you the information. We'll put it in the show notes, and she would be a great person to get a hold of. So thanks again for being on here. And anything else you want to share?
No, just go
Okay.
do it.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you for listening in today. I hope you got great value out of everything that Michelle said. She was so amazing, all the information she gave. So if you want to get a hold of her, it'll be in all the information will be in the show notes. I hope that if you got value today, that you will share this with other loan officers and people that you know so that they can get great value from it too. So have a great day. Enjoy every minute of it.